The courtroom was silent, yet the air felt heavy, almost too heavy to breathe. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort you, it suffocates you. Wooden benches creaked softly as people shifted in their seats, trying not to make a sound. Even the distant hum of the air conditioner seemed nervous. Cameras snapped quietly, almost as if in reverence. When Meri Brown entered, she wasn't trying to impress. She wasn't in anything loud or flashy. She dressed in quiet colors, solid, powerful, nearly like armor. But her eyes spoke a tale the world had never heard. They were red and puffy and exhausted, but resolute. She wasn't here to weep. She was here to say the truth that had lain hidden for too long. Each step she took rang out in the courtroom. Tap, 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 not footsteps alone, but reminders that the woman descending down that hallway wasn't the same one who had kept quiet to maintain peace. Mary's hands trembled slightly as she clutched a folder against her chest. Inside were the papers she had spent nights staring at: legal documents, evidence, photographs, messages, but what mattered most wasn't written on paper. It was carved into her heart. In the distance, Kody Brown sat, his shoulders tense, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the table before him. He did not look up. He did not have to. The tension between them was palpable enough to fill the room. Once, they lived together. Once, she stood by the window waiting for him. Once, they walked hand in hand while their children played in the backyard. But today, they were two strangers standing on different sides of a chilly courtroom where love had become evidence and memories were turned into witnesses. Behind Kody stood Robyn Brown, all calm, her face expressionless, a painting with no narrative. She said nothing. She didn't even shift position. But her presence was deafening. Everyone in that room could sense the history between them, the triangle that had once been a family. By Meri, two still figures sat, Kody Brown and Janelle Brown. They were not there as silent witnesses. They were there as women who understood pain. Women who lived in the same tempest. Kody slightly leaned forward, poised to rise if Meri dropped. Janelle locked her hands together tight, muttering something under her breath. Perhaps a prayer. Perhaps courage. Everybody in that courtroom knew this day would arrive. But no one expected it to happen like this. Bare, naked, like an open wound in public. The judge walked in. A man who was known for his measured authority, his voice generally had weight, but even he seemed to go at a slower pace today. He put on his glasses, glanced around the room, and noted the faces before him. This was not another case on his docket. This was a family that had unraveled. And now the shattered bits were strewn on his bench. He cleared his throat. Court is in session, he stated. His voice was firm but without the normal chill of the law. Even he sensed the feeling churning around him. Meri Brown versus Kody Brown, the clerk read out. The names rang off the walls of the room, sounding like something that nobody wanted to recall. The judge leaned forward slightly, his hands folded neatly. We are here today to address the claims brought by Meri Brown, he said. But to Meri, those words were just formalities. This wasn't about legal papers. This was about years of betrayal, silence and pain that had been slowly killing her spirit. Meri closed her eyes for a second, and in that beat of silence, all flashed before her. She saw herself standing at the altar years ago, smiling, thinking forever. She saw her kids growing up in the big house, laughter ringing through the halls. She saw family dinners, shared secrets, late-night conversations. She saw love, or at least what she thought was love. And then she noticed the slow fade, the manner in which conversations became silence, how hugs became shorter, how holidays began to resemble performances, how love became something that needed to be begged for. Her heart twisted. This was beyond a courtroom. This was a funeral for the love she had once had faith in. She looked at Kody, and for a moment, she didn't see the man sitting in front of her now. She saw the man she fell in love with. The one who promised to stand by her. The one who looked into her eyes years ago and said, "You'll never be alone." But she had been alone, for so long. The bailiff handed out documents to both parties. The sound of rustling papers filled the silence like whispers of everything unspoken. Mary's lawyer leaned in and whispered something encouraging. She nodded softly. But she didn't need someone to fight her battle. This time she was her own voice. Kody fidgeted in his seat. His hand flinched a little, as if he wanted to speak up but didn't know how. Robyn's eyes tracked every motion with caution, like a shadow watching over its light. Christine dropped her head, attempting to suppress the tempest of feelings brewing within her. And then the judge spoke once more slowly. "Before I go any further," he said, "let me be absolutely clear. This has nothing to do with contracts or with signatures. It has to do with a connection that once was and now isn't." A low murmur swept the courtroom. Some reporters shifted their cameras. Some members of the family gripped hands a little tighter. But Meri remained motionless. She had waited years for someone to say those words out loud. The judge went on. "Mrs. Brown, you asked to address us before making any legal arguments. Do you still want to continue?" Meri got up, each movement calculated, each movement precise. Her chair moved back quietly. She moved to the front, not as a supplicant seeking justice, but as a woman reclaiming her strength. The microphone before her was tiny, but it seemed like a mountain to her. She put her palms on the edge of the wooden table. Her breathing was calm now. "I do," she said. The two words were like a clap of thunder in the quiet air. Firm, unbroken. She turned to confront the courtroom. Not the judge, not Kody, but all of them. All the years she had remained silent were now pressing against her chest. And for the first time in a very long time, Meri Brown was not afraid to be heard. Kody's eyes finally rose. Their gazes met, and for an instant, the burden of their own past hung there. A delicate thread. One tug, and it might snap irreparably. She breathed in slowly. "For years," she started softly, "I believed in something that stopped believing in me." The crowd fell entirely silent once more. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Robyn's fingers tightened around her clutch. Christine wiped a single tear that escaped down her cheek. Janelle closed her eyes and whispered Mary's name under her breath like a prayer. This wasn't the moment the legal case began. This was the moment the emotional war officially started. Meri took another breath. Steady, strong. She wasn't just a woman in pain. She was a woman who survived pain. This was her storm. And she had finally marched into it without fear. Sometimes the truth hurts louder than any scream. The judge nodded slightly, indicating that Meri could start. The courtroom was completely silent. No one was whispering. No one was moving. It was as if even time itself was holding its breath, waiting for the first word to escape from her lips. Meri drew in a trembling breath. The microphone caught the subtle wobble in her tone as she started to talk. Not to the judge, not even to Kody, but to all the people who had ever watched her remain silent. "For years," she started, "I believed in something that stopped believing in me." Her voice shook at the beginning of the first few words. But then, it leveled. Like a flame which had danced in the breeze too long and finally reached air. "I had believed in our family. I had believed in our dreams. I had believed that love could conquer anything, if we only worked hard enough. But what do you do?" She swallowed, her eyes dropping, "when you're the only one still trying?" Kody's head dipped a little. His tightly clasped hands in front of him betrayed his tension. Mary's eyes never wavered. "You said to me once," she declared, her voice growing stronger, "that we'd grow old together, that no matter what, we'd weather every storm together. But somewhere along the line, I came to realize that I was weathering the storms alone." Her voice hung suspended, dropping hard into every heart present. She moved inward, a deep breath. "You quit looking at me. You quit talking to me. I was made invisible in my own marriage. I'd pass you by in the hallway, and it was as if I wasn't there." A small gasp came from someone in the back. Maybe a fan, maybe someone who had lived the same pain. Mary's eyes began to glisten. "You didn't have to scream at me to make me feel unloved. Your silence did that for you." Robyn squirmed uncomfortably in her seat behind Kody. Her face was inscrutable. Guilt, maybe, or unease. The cameras recorded every flicker of feeling, but the true story was not in the camera eyes. It was being written in the shaky hands of a woman who had finally decided she was finished keeping silent. Meri grasped a small photograph from within the folder. A family portrait. She held it out for all to view. It was faded, creased and worn at the edges. Yet the faces beamed with happy, promise-filled smiles. "See this?" she said quietly, her voice breaking. "We were going to be a team. A family of trust, of faith, of love." But what the public saw on television wasn't real. Behind these smiles there was crying. Behind these flawless seconds there was pain. I just kept on pretending everything was fine, because I believed if I smiled enough, maybe it would be true. She flipped the picture toward her. But it never did. The judge sat silently, his expression relaxing. Even he looked affected by the raw truth spilling from her. Kody finally met her gaze. His eyes locked onto hers for the first time since she'd started talking. There was guilt there. And perhaps a touch of something more. Fear. Meri went on. "I am not here to ruin anyone. I'm not here to humiliate you, Kody. I'm here because I lost myself in trying to be enough for you." Her voice cracked then, ever so slightly, and the courtroom seemed to inhale with her anguish. "I kept wondering, what did I do wrong? What changed? Why can't he see me anymore? I gave you everything, my youth, my loyalty, my faith. And what did you give me in return? Distance. Silence." She let a tear slip from her eye, but she didn't brush it away. She let it fall. It wasn't weakness anymore. It was release. She addressed the judge. "Your Honor, it's not only about a relationship deteriorating, it's about a woman being dismantled piece by piece. I lingered in that home like a ghost, as life continued without me, and I justified it to myself, because I didn't want to destroy the family." Christine's eyes closed, tears falling silently. Janelle touched a hand on Christine's, a silent acknowledgement of mutual suffering. Meri glanced down at her hands, then looked up again. "But you can only remain invisible for so long before you see, you're disappearing." The judge leaned forward, his tone soft. "Mrs. Brown, are you telling me you felt abandoned emotionally?" Meri nodded. "Not just felt, Your Honor. I was." Kody shifted restlessly, pushing a hand through his hair. He only spoke finally, his tone low and defensive, yet also broken with guilt. "I didn't hurt you on purpose, Meri," he whispered. Things just altered. We both altered." Meri faced him, her voice gaining altitude. Not with anger, but with contained truth that had been stored for years. "No, Kody, you changed. You found reasons to allow yourself to leave me emotionally first, before you ever uttered the words out loud. You stood in the kitchen one day, and looked at me and saw someone who no longer fit your definition of love. And instead of battling for me, you left." Kody opened his mouth to answer, but the words stuck in his throat. Meri's voice gentled. "You didn't leave me. You left the woman who was there for you, when no one else was. You left the person who believed in your hopes, even when they made no sense." The emotion in her voice made the whole courtroom shrink, become more intimate, like everybody there was seeing, not a trial, but a heartbreak in progress. "You said love was forever," she breathed. "But forever doesn't mean until it's not convenient." Robyn looked away, blinking hard. Christine wiped her face silently. Even the judge leaned forward, a little straighter, visibly shaken. Meri breathed again. "Do you have any idea what it's like to sleep next to someone who isn't present? To celebrate anniversaries that don't amount to anything? To laugh on one's own, cry on one's own, and pretend the silence doesn't hurt?" She hesitated, her voice shaking once more. "I lived that reality for years, and every time I wanted to escape, I used to say to myself, it'll get better, but it never did. Because you can't mend something by yourself, when the other person's already lost hope." There was silence after that was unbearable. Even the camera clicks ceased. Then she uttered words that cut through each wall in that room. "I wasn't looking for perfection, Kody. I was simply looking to be noticed." One tear finally escaped Kody's eye. He brushed it away hastily, but too late. The cameras had picked it up. The man who had always appeared so unflappable was breaking under the pressure of her reality. Meri took a step back, breathing heavily but evenly. She'd said what she'd come to say. And yet her eyes relayed to all present there was still something hidden inside of her. "I kept reminding myself that loyalty was staying," she whispered. "But now I understand. Loyalty is not staying where your soul is being killed. It's being brave enough to leave behind what shatters you." Her attorney nodded discreetly, letting her know she could rest her case for the time being. But Meri was far from done. She turned and addressed the judge once more. Your Honor, I don't ask for pity. I ask for peace. I ask that the truth be acknowledged, not because it alters the past, but because it finally frees me. And she gazed at Kody once more. Her tone softened to near whisper. I don't hate you. I just finally love myself enough to stop begging for your love. Those hurt more than anything else she'd said. They weren't mean. They were done. The judge instructed a short recess. His voice hushed. We'll take 10 minutes, he told them, looking at both of them with sympathetic eyes. As Meri left the stand, Christine and Janelle stood up right behind her. They did not say anything. They just enfolded her in a silent, sheltering hug. Cameras popped, but nobody cared. What the world saw in that moment was not scandal. It was healing. Meri took a deep breath, her shoulders finally relaxing, as if 1,000 unseen weights had been removed from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she didn't feel insignificant. She felt heard. And Kody just sat there speechless. For once he was the one who couldn't find his words. Guilt doesn't hide well under a spotlight. The recess ended slowly, like a storm pausing only to gather more strength. People returned to their seats, their faces still soft with the weight of what they had just heard. Even the reporters, who were usually quick to chatter during breaks, were quiet, their pens still. Something about Meri's testimony had cut through the noise. When the judge came back, his face was stern but not unfeeling. He looked from Meri to Kody, knowing that what was to come next would not be a courtroom fight, but an emotional accounting. Mr. Brown, the judge told him, his tone even, you have the floor. Everyone looked at Kody. For a second he did not budge. His fingers drummed on the edge of the table, his breathing light. Gone was the upright stance he had once been famous for. In its stead was a man who appeared cornered, not by a judge, not by a jury, but by the truth. Slowly he rose. His lawyer stooped to whisper, keep calm, stick to the facts. But Kody firmly pushed the lawyer's hand aside. He wasn't here to go undercover with technical jargon. If he was going under, he wanted to go down using his own language. He walked to the stand. His footsteps weren't loud like Meri's had been earlier. They were hesitant, uneven. Each step seemed to weigh him down. As he turned to face the courtroom, his jaw tightened, and for the first time in a long time, Kody Brown looked vulnerable. He cleared his throat. I never meant to hurt Meri, he started, voice low and uneven. I have to get that out before I say anything else. Meri observed him closely from her chair, not with hatred, not even with anger, but with a quiet, bruised strength. Kody breathed again. Things between us shifted. And perhaps I didn't manage that shift in the way that I could have. But I did not wake up one day and choose to walk away. It wasn't a thing like that. The courtroom remained quiet. Even the clicking cameras were quiet, sensing that this was something no one wished to interrupt. He paced his fingers restlessly through his hair. When I first met Meri, she was my rock, my partner, my best friend. We created something that for a few years seemed impenetrable. But as the years passed, the pressure of it all, our family, the expectations, the weight of it all, began to suffocate me, and I didn't know how to stop what was shattering. His voice cracked a little. It wasn't the well-rehearsed Kody everyone had seen on TV. This was the man behind the picture. The man who was gradually disintegrating before everyone's eyes. Kody glanced at Meri then. Not the lawyer, not the judge, just her. You tell me I left you. And perhaps that's exactly what it seemed like to you. But where I was, it seemed like we were drifting far, far away from each other. And no matter what I did, I couldn't catch up to you anymore. Meri blinked slowly. She didn't say anything. She let him go on. I began to feel like a stranger in my own marriage. Kody went on. Every conversation was like navigating through a storm. Every second together felt oppressive. And instead of confronting it like I should have, he swallowed hard. I withdrew. I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it because I didn't know how else to breathe. I thought if I pushed you away, it would hurt less. But I see now it hurt you more. The judge leaned forward a little, hearing intently. Kody took a breath. His fingers clenched on the podium's edge. I know I let you down, Meri. I didn't speak with you. I didn't hold you when you were shattering. I didn't pay attention to the little things that were important to you. And perhaps the worst of it is, I talked myself into believing that silence was preferable to the truth. Christine's face tightened at those words. Janelle lowered her eyes, as if remembering her own silent nights. Robyn shifted uncomfortably, chewing at the inside of her cheek. Meri's expression didn't change. Her eyes stayed fixed on him, steady, piercing. She had spent years waiting for him to say these words. Now that they were here, they were too late to heal, but not too late to be heard. Kody's tone softened. I know everybody here has heard her suffering, and she's right. She lived in silence because I created that. But I was drowning too, Meri. I felt like I couldn't make anybody happy. Not you. Not the children. Not the other wives. Not me. The courtroom murmured softly. A handful of people speaking in hushed tones. But the judge raised his hand soon enough, and the murmurs subsided like waves receding from the beach. Kody gazed down at his trembling hands. I could have been honest. I could have told you when I first began to feel distant, rather than allowing the gap to build like a wall between us. I allowed my fear of argument to build a cage for both of us. Then his voice became a little harder, but still tinged with regret. But Meri, you changed as well. You wouldn't speak to me. You closed up. We did this, both of us. It wasn't one person walking away, it was two people gradually giving up. Meri stiffened a little, her jaw clenching, but she didn't speak. She didn't have to. His words said it all. I know I seemed like the villain, Kody whispered. And perhaps I was. Perhaps I am. But I promise you, I didn't stop loving you in one night. It just waned. And I didn't have the heart to tell you. There it was. The words she had always wondered, but had never heard spoken aloud. Christine's eyes were filled with tears. Janelle clenched her hands together tightly. Even Robyn, typically level-headed, blinked quickly as her throat constricted. Meri leaned forward at last, her voice steady but hard. You say it faded like it's something that just happened to us. But love doesn't fade on its own, Kody. You let it. Her words cut through the air like glass. Kody's eyes shone, his breathing ragged. Perhaps I did. Perhaps I was selfish. Perhaps I was exhausted. I don't know. I only know that the man I was with you isn't the man I became. The judge broke in gently. Mr. Brown, are you taking responsibility for the failure of the marriage? Kody took a long, anguished breath. Yes, he murmured. I am. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Heavy, thick, impossible to ignore. Meri's hands gripped the edge of the bench. She had waited years for this kind of honesty, and hearing it didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the nights she cried alone, or the birthdays spent in silence. But it validated her pain in front of the world. Kody went on. I know I can't take back what I did. I can't turn back the clock and give you the love I wasn't giving anymore. I can't return to you those years. But I can stand here and speak the truth out loud, even if I become the bad guy. The judge nodded reluctantly, taking notes. But his expression betrayed something more human than by the book. He cared about this too. Kody's voice dropped again. You gave me everything, Meri, and I gave you distance. I know that now, and I live with it. Meri swallowed hard, fending off tears. She hadn't expected him to break like this. She hadn't expected to see the fissures in his carefully constructed walls. Kody's lawyer attempted to jump in, but Kody held up a hand in a small gesture. No, I'll be done. He addressed the judge. Your Honor, I can't act like I was innocent in this situation, but I do hope you see this was not a marriage where one was perfect and the other destroyed it. It was two who lost each other piece by piece. I just happened to be the one to leave first. Meri responded then, quietly. No, Kody, you didn't leave first. You left loudest. The room fell silent once more. Kody's head sank a little. For once he had no defense. No curt words. No excuses. Only silence. The judge inhaled deeply. Thank you, Mr. Brown, he said in an even tone. This isn't easy for anybody here. Kody nodded rigidly and returned to his seat. His hands trembled, his breath coming in uneven gasps. Robyn took his hand, but he did not reciprocate. Instead, he fixed his eyes on the ground, as if a man seeing the destruction he had denied for years. Meri sat upright, not because she'd won something yet, but because for the first time, she wasn't the one who was being silenced. He had spoken, and in doing so he had unknowingly validated every hurt she bore. The judge looked at them both. "This court isn't just about laws," he said, "it's about truth. And today the truth has been spoken on both sides." Christine wiped her eyes, muttering something to Janelle. The journalist wrote furiously, but their faces weren't self-satisfied. They were emotional as well. The raw emotion in the room was too thick to disregard. Kody rested back against his chair, closing his eyes. He had finally gotten everything out he'd kept buried all those years. But the expression on his face made one thing certain: truth does not always set you free. Sometimes it merely reveals to you the prison that you constructed yourself. The courtroom remained, but it no longer stayed silent. It was the type of stillness that shook beneath the surface, the type that warned everyone something was about to happen. Meri Brown had already cracked open the defenses Kody had constructed for years. Now, the truth got its turn to talk. The judge shifted forward a little and cleared his throat. "Right now," he replied in an even tone, "we'll start with witness testimony. Mrs. Christine Brown, you may come up to the stand." Rumors stirred in the crowd. Even the court stenographers, who were diligently typing out each word, looked up. Christine slowly made her way to the stand, hands folded, eyes unflinching. She was not merely a witness. She was a guardian of secrets no one had ever had the nerve to speak out loud before. Kody moved restlessly in his seat. Robyn's gaze flickered uncomfortably in his direction. She could sense it. Something was on the verge of being said that no amount of carefully crafted words would ever be able to hide. Christine drew a long breath when she was sworn in. The bailiff retreated, and the judge nodded minimally, indicating she could start. She addressed Meri directly. "Years," she whispered. "I stood with you alone. I stood with you battling your place in a family that addressed you as if you were a specter." The words batted against her like a soft hammer, not vehement, but crushing. Mary's mouth quivered. She had carried this suffering so long that hearing someone else say it at last was heartbreaking and healing. Christine faced the judge. "This isn't easy for me," she confessed. "I loved this family. I believed in it. But the truth is, there were cracks. Cracks we ignored weren't there. Cracks that Meri attempted to repair herself while the rest of us continued forward." Kody's jaw clenched. "Christine," he growled under his breath, "don't do this." But Christine did not heed him. She stiffened her shoulders, her voice gaining in every sentence. Meri was the first wife. She gave everything. She believed in the dream of a large family, in oneness, in loyalty. But instead of being respected for that, she was abandoned. Her words flowed into the room like water seeping through stone, slow, relentless, chiseling out the truth. "I observed how holidays had changed," Christine went on. "How Meri would set the decorations, plan, and wait for us all to be together. But gradually, the laughter began elsewhere. Decisions were made in her absence. Plans didn't include her. She became invisible." Meri fished out a tissue from her pocket and dabbed at her eyes. It wasn't because she was fragile. It was because she had spent years pretending not to be in pain. Christine's voice shook a little. "I didn't say anything. None of us did, really, and that's something I'll be carrying around for the rest of my life." The courtroom sat silently once more. But this silence wasn't cold. This silence was filled with realization. The judge leaned forward. "Can you describe to the court what you personally witnessed, Mrs. Brown?" Christine nodded slowly. "Yes, I remember nights when Meri sat alone on the porch. She would look at the door, hoping someone would invite her in, invite her to be included again. But no one came. I saw her smile through pain. I watched her fade away a little bit more each year." She faced Kody now, her gaze unyielding. "And you, Kody, you allowed it to happen. You allowed the woman who was by your side the longest to slip away like she was nothing." Kody had his fists balled. He didn't say a word. His confident stance was non-existent. He was not Kody the leader anymore. He was Kody the man standing in front of a mirror held up by people who used to believe in him. Robyn fidgeted in her chair, gnawing on her lip. She ached to say something, but the force of Christine's words weighed upon all of them like an invisible hand. Christine went on, her voice firmer, stronger. "We convinced ourselves she was okay, that she was tough, that she didn't need us. But that was the lie that we all told so that we could feel more okay about leaving her on her own." A tear-stained reporter in the back of the courtroom wiped at her eyes. Even those who had only heard about their case on television could sense the hurt now, unflinching, human, and irrevocable. Meri slowly raised her head. Her gaze caught Christine's. There was hurt there, certainly, but more as well. Thanks. Finally, someone was saying it. Finally, someone was speaking the truth she had harbored for years. The judge nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. That will be part of the record. But Christine didn't resign. She stood again, turning back one last time, voice shaking but indomitable. This isn't about legalities. It's about humanity. Meri gave her soul to this family. And we, all of us, failed her. And Kody, you led that failure. The judge arched a brow but didn't hold her back. Some truths were worth breaking the silence over. Christine went back to her seat. But the courtroom wasn't ready to take a breath yet. That was just the start of it. The judge called the next witness, Mrs. Janelle Brown. Janelle strode to the stand with silent resolve. She wasn't as passionate as Christine. But when Janelle testifies, people pay attention. She put her hand on the Bible, was sworn in and started. I saw everything too, she said quietly. But different from Christine. I watched it in silence. Kody shut his eyes. He knew what was coming. Janelle went on. Meri was always strong. Too strong maybe. She smiled even when she was breaking. She made it easy for us to believe she didn't need anyone. But I knew. I saw the way her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. Her voice wavered for an instant, then regained its stability. There was one evening, years back. She visited me. She didn't talk much. She just sat beside me and softly spoke. I'm still here, even if no one can see me. That's when I understood how isolated she really was. The room as a whole gasped. Meri clapped her hand over her mouth. She recalled that evening. She recalled the feeling of whispering into the blackness, praying that someone would listen. And Janelle had. Janelle gazed right back at Kody now. She pleaded with you to look at her. Not with words, but with every small action she took. And you refused to. Kody opened his mouth but made no sound. He dropped his eyes. His hands trembled a little on the table. Janelle addressed the judge. It's not about fault anymore. It's about acknowledging the harm. She was erased within her own family. And no woman should be that way. The judge nodded gravely. The last moment arrived in an unexpected way. The judge inquired, would the plaintiff care to make any further statements, or call other witnesses? Meri rose slowly. But instead of testifying, she faced the gallery. I want Robyn to speak, Meri said quietly. The room was a cacophony of whispers. Robyn stiffened. She hadn't been called. Kody swept around to face her, shaking his head. You don't have to, he whispered urgently. But Robyn surprised everyone. She rose. Her legs wobbled, but she moved up to the stand. The bailiff swore her in. The judge regarded her seriously. You may speak. Robyn's hands shook as she clutched the wooden lip of the witness box. I don't know if I'm the right one to say anything. Meri regarded her firmly. Yes, you are. Robyn gulped. I know what happened. I saw it, I was a part of it. And perhaps I made it worse. Kody's eyes grew wide. Robyn, no, Kody. She spoke softly but firmly. You have to hear this. She faced Meri. When I entered the family, you accepted me, even when you hurt. And instead of standing by your side, I was the wall between you and Kody. I didn't mean to, but I did. And I'm sorry. Tears ran down Robyn's face. For years she had endured the whispers, the blame, the shame. But today she couldn't keep quiet anymore. I watched him drift away from you, Robyn went on. And I did nothing to stop him. Perhaps a part of me feared that if I did, he'd drift away from me as well. Meri's chest rose and fell heavily. Those words pierced deep, not with hatred, but with honesty. Robyn lowered her eyes. You deserve to be loved, Meri, not just remembered. The courtroom was silent again. But this silence was different, thick with emotion. No one looked away. Not even Kody. For the first time, the truth wasn't hiding in the shadows. It stood there exposed. Painful, brutal, and freeing. Christine's words, Janelle's confession, Robyn's guilt, they all became a chorus of truth, echoing through the courtroom. This wasn't just Meri's fight anymore. It was a moment where everyone had to face what they had done, or failed to do. The judge considered those standing before him. This, he spoke slowly, is not merely a legal conflict. It's the unraveling of a tale constructed upon silence. And silence, he continued firmly, has implications. Meri took a seat, feeling the burden of years gradually clearing from her shoulders. She didn't require vengeance. She required the truth to exist aloud. And now, it did at last. Kody's head was low. He had no further speeches, no more excuses. For the first time, he experienced the complete reverberation of the hurt he had inflicted, not only on Meri, but on everyone in his life. The courtroom remained silent, not the sort of silence resulting from nothing going on, but the sort resulting when everything that needed to be said had at last been said. Words that had long been stuck in the walls of shattered houses and whispers after midnight were now out in the open beneath the harsh bright lights of the courtroom. Meri Brown sat at her table, with hands clenched tightly within her lap. Her breathing was not steady, but unrestricted. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel unseen. She felt visible. Her suffering had a voice. Christine, Janelle, and Robyn had each testified, separately. And each time it had been a portion of the puzzle people didn't want to examine previously. Now it was before them, irrefutable. Kody Brown slumped in his chair at his table, hands dangling between his knees. He seemed smaller than ever. The self-assured man who used to hold the beat of their family was gone. In his place was a man who had finally stood face to face with the repercussions of silence. The judge shifted in his seat and cleared his throat. "This has been," he said slowly, "an unusual and deeply emotional case. What we've heard here today is not about legal violations or broken contracts. It's about broken promises. About years of emotional neglect that has left scars." The courtroom was quiet. Even the reporters who were normally quick to whisper or write simply sat there. All of them could sense this moment weighing down on them like the beat of a heart reverberating in the room. The weight of regret. The judge looked in the direction of Kody. "Mr. Brown, is there anything you would like to say before I make my announcement?" Kody hesitated. His mouth was parched, his chest heavy. But gradually he stood up from his chair. His voice, once deep and commanding, emerged softly. "Yes, I do." He moved toward the stand in slow, unsteady steps, his footsteps ringing on the floor like a man moving toward the truth he had evaded for too long. He gazed at Meri, but she didn't flinch. She wasn't scared any longer. She wasn't broken any longer. "I thought," Kody started, his voice shaking slightly, "that I could do it all. A large family, multiple wives, a messy life. I thought love would stretch on and on. I thought time would heal everything. But I was wrong." His voice shook in the air. "I didn't wake up one morning and think I was going to hurt you, Meri. But I did. I hurt you every time I remained silent when you needed me to stand up for you. Every time I let the space between us get wider. Every time I turned my face away, while you were struggling to keep everything intact." Robyn hung her head. Christine and Janelle shared unspoken glances. Kody's voice cracked entirely now. "And I can't repair what I broke. I can't undo the years I made you feel unworthy." He gripped his fists. "I lost the woman who stayed with me the longest. Not because she left me, but because I drove her away without even noticing it." A tear fell down his cheek. This was not the man the world had watched on television. This was the man without any mask, standing naked before his own errors. Meri did not say a word. She did not have to. Her silence spoke louder than words. A voice of strength. The judge nodded gravely. "Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mrs. Brown." He turned to Meri. "You have the right to reply." Meri got up slowly. And at that point the room became quieter, as if time itself was bending to hear. She stepped forward, not to the stand but to the middle of the room. Her voice was calm, although her eyes glistened with held-back tears. "For years," she started, "I pleaded silently, not with words, but with everything I did. I waited for you to notice me, Kody. I waited for the man I loved to remember who I was." She drew a breath. "But you didn't." Her words grew louder with each passing word. "You allowed me to vanish in a family I contributed towards. You allowed my laughter to subside. You saw me die from the inside and still said nothing. And that pained more than everything else." The air was heavy with emotion, even strangers in the gallery, who didn't know her, wiped at their eyes. It wasn't about Meri anymore. It was about every woman or man who had ever been overlooked. But, Meri said, chin rising, this isn't where my story finishes. For a long time, I thought that I needed your love in order to be complete. But now I realize, I only needed my own strength. Her words struck like still thunder. She swiveled to the judge. I'm not here for revenge. I'm not here for money. I'm here to end the chapter that almost destroyed me. The verdict, the judge leaned forward, his voice low and contemplative. In all my years on this bench, he said slowly, I've witnessed many types of battles, but few are stronger than the ones we wage in silence. He clasped his hands together. Mrs. Brown, what you have experienced is true and inescapable. And Mr. Brown, what you have confessed is just as obvious. Then the judge did something surprising. He stood up. This court cannot reshape the past, he said, but it can recognize it. And that counts. Today this verdict isn't about punishment for a crime. It's about acknowledgement. He addressed Meri squarely. You were wronged. You were neglected. You were unseen. And today that truth is no longer secret. Then he looked at Kody. And you must bear the burden of that truth. Because some words aren't inked on paper. They're taken in the heart. The gavel descended gently. This court acknowledges the emotional harm inflicted on Meri Brown. This case is now closed. But nobody budged. A woman reborn, Meri, was standing taller than she had in years. For the first time in so long, she felt light, not because the pain had disappeared, but because she had finally let it be known. Christine and Janelle stood up and ran to her. Christine hugged her tightly, saying, You did it. Janelle tightened her grip on her hand. You finally got to talk. Even Robyn, who remained sitting, had tears streaming down her cheeks. She spoke softly. I'm sorry. Meri faced her. There was no anger now in her eyes. Only quiet strength. I know, she said simply. And I forgive you. But I won't ever be that woman again. Robyn nodded, understanding. Kody edged forward slowly. Each step appeared to be 1,000 pounds. When he stood before Meri at last, he opened his mouth and was silent. For years he had spoken over her, around her or through her. Now, there was nothing to say. Meri looked at him, steady and calm. You don't get to break me anymore. It wasn't yelled. It didn't have to be. That sentence bore the load of years. Kody dropped his gaze, silent tears falling. It wasn't the end of a marriage he mourned. It was the end of the woman who loved him enough to forgive all. Walking out different, the courtroom doors swung open, and the chilly afternoon air surged inside. The world outside continued to turn, but for Meri Brown, nothing was the same anymore. She stepped out with head held high, with Christine and Janelle flanking her. The reporters swarmed around the steps, microphones flashing, cameras clicking, questions swirling. But Meri did not pause. She owed the world no explanations anymore. She had said her piece where it counted most. Before the man who silenced her for so long, she stepped back at the courthouse steps. Behind her, Kody sat inside, still on the bench, hands covering his face. Robyn stood in the doorway, her face white, realizing the world she had kept intact, suddenly fractured into two halves. Meri raised her head to the clouds, and closed her eyes. She wasn't leaving a courtroom. She was coming to freedom. The last word that night. Later on, when the news made the rounds, and the clips went viral, it wasn't going to be about the court decision. It was going to be about the instant Meri Brown stood in the middle of that court, and reclaimed her voice. It was going to be about how Christine, Janelle, and even Robyn found their voice. And they would discuss how Kody, for the first time ever, had no authority left to conceal himself behind. But Meri didn't matter about headlines. She mattered about the woman looking back at her in the mirror. The woman who made it through the coldest winters of her life. The woman who at last declared, no more. Walking away from the courthouse that day, Meri knew this truth in her bones. Justice isn't always punishment for the person who wronged you. Sometimes it's about never letting them shut you up again.